Hi, Khalid.
Hi, Frank.
It's really great to see you today. Just because it's great to see you.
Thank
We haven't seen each other for, I don't know, a few months, maybe a year or something. I can't remember the last time
I
we
feel
met.
like I'm seeing you all the time because I'm just looking. um,
um,
but yeah,
and yeah, I wanted to. There's so much I want to talk to you about. Um, I mean, obviously, the core of the conversation is going to be around Gaza and Palestine, but I also want to address Egypt and, in particular, Alaa Abd El Fattah, who is someone you've fought for many years now. But I want to start with um, we have experienced, in a way, I have, I'm sure you have, over the last, I don't know, 17 months, 18 months since October 7th and its aftermath, um, some kind of collective trauma, and as I was telling you, like these kind of conversations, videos are in a way a way for me
Hmm.
to try to work through it and to try to see how we can, as a people, as a movement, keep going while, in a way, a part of us, a part of humanity, is being destroyed, in front of our eyes. Um, I was wondering, I mean, I know you've been active on social justice issues for many years, but I was wondering, did you have time yet to reflect on how the Gaza genocide has changed you, or has changed the way you see the world, or has changed the way you see power?
God, wow.
I know it's an easy one to start
That's the
with.
thing. Like, I feel like I feel like I'm coming here, like I'm bursting. Like I'm on the one side so excited to be talking to you and to be talking to the community that you hold in this space. Um, and Yeah, because there's a whole territory of reflection that somehow doesn't open up unless it's this kind of intimate in a way. Um, and God, I mean, I woke up this morning um, with just the weight of that sense of the intensity that is unrelenting. If you're in any way aligned with this and you're following it and you're, uh, you know, engaged. Um, it's obviously what we're facing is nothing compared to what is being faced in Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank, or if you're Palestinian anywhere, right? But for me, even the profound disconnect between how the world around me seems and what I am witnessing on a daily basis, and the extent to which it is a kind of not just a regular assault on my senses, a regular assault on my sense of the present, of the past, of the future, of community, of friendship, of everything, the entire time. And I'm supposed to kind of just sort of be okay. Um, and profoundly, I'm not. And and so that it, like I know the simple answer to your question, have I had time to reflect on it? No.
Yeah.
But what I have had time to do is decide on a course of action and follow a path that I am still learning the terms of, right? And um, for me, the moment where the kind of intense psychological pressure bursts into, I am not hiding anymore. And I don't know what that will cost me. I don't know where that will take me. But on all levels, I do not want to hide anymore. The price is too high. The whatever forms of social contract that I was conditioned myself, right, into accepting as part of the fabric of normal life. I can't do that social contract anymore, and so I have to find a new one.
Yeah.
What that means for my life, for my career, for my family, like for everything, right? And it's hard to even describe what that social contract was before, but at some level it was that, hide certain things, navigate the silences around certain things, and trust somehow that the world will find a solution without you having to really take what feel like profound risks.
Yeah.
Right? And then you reach a point where you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. It was exactly my reliance or ability to accept that the terms of that contract that got us here. That is the map that goes backwards of my complicity, of ours collectively. And then you kind of go, well, if someone who has this consciousness, right, who has been to Palestine, whose parents, my father and my grandfather, were political prisoners, who, if I am not stepping out in the various ways that I have found over these last 16, 17 months, then how can I expect anyone else to? Right?
Yeah.
And this is where the beautiful, because there's a beautiful part, there's the negative part of the answer to your question, and there's the positive part to your question, right? The answer. And then you discover that so much of what you had either told yourself was impossible or projected onto people you didn't know or communities around you, you discover that so much of that was not true, right? You discover as well circles of solidarity that you didn't even know existed, right? And you also discover the ways in which a more profound alignment is fulfilling, deeply fulfilling, in a way that makes you go, wow, I mean, this is really hard. I mean, I have wept more than I have wept in my entire life, with a regularity that I don't understand. And I have wept for the pain, and I have wept for the beauty. Right?
Yeah.
And I've wept for the difficulty, but with extraordinary regularity. But at the same time, it has been, the closest I can describe to life, really living. And I hope I can remain true to these words, but I don't ever want to go back.
Yeah.
And there is a profound freedom in that. And that freedom,
it can cost you in a way, right? But you're still freer than you were.
On the level of your soul, it doesn't feel like it costs you. It feels like not doing it costs you, and insofar as you can find a way with allies, with friends, with others, right, to make a shape of living, then it's just, I find it so much more beautiful, so much more inspiring, and I just want to do it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, and we've both been involved in various kind of actions and organizations in relations to artists for a ceasefire in the US, artists for Palestine UK in the UK, and I guess you've also had these conversations, often private, with people, fellow actors, fellow directors that I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that you feel these people were still in chains somehow, and you feel privately that they were 100% on board and with us. And I mean, who is not with us anyway? You know, who is not going to advocate for freedom, equality, etc. But you felt, that this social contract of, they know what they have to lose, was also playing a part. But I've experienced over the last, 17 months, and I've seen it with my own eyes, people that so far had been silent because of this kind of social and business, obviously, contract when you're a well-known actor and stuff. But that once they become free and once they were unstoppable, and there was like, I might lose a few contracts, I might lose a few films, but man, this is so much better in a way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I also, it's. I mean, there's just. I mean, on a very simple level, you. When there's a genocide, you cross a line.
Yeah.
And it's almost it's almost like it's almost shameful to say so, as if anything prior to that wasn't enough, right? But a genocide just completely rewrites the terms.
Yeah, you have a choice at this point,
personally and collectively. And I think that's part of the reason why we are seeing a global shift in consciousness. There is a massive shift in consciousness, and those of us who've been part of this struggle in one form or another for decades, there has never been a moment like this in terms of that consciousness, right? And for me, the question is how together we turn that into an avalanche, because the avalanche hasn't happened yet. The shift in consciousness has. The ground is set for an even bigger shift, but that requires us, the people of the people of conscience who are activated and who are willing to take those risks and who are willing to find ways to work together that set the ground and build the foundations for a better world, right? To find out how to do so.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, this is one of the most pressing question, and we've in a way experienced it in the past. I mean, the Stop the War movement, just before the Iraq war or Iraq invasion, when you had at least, was it 1 million or 2 million people in the streets of London, was also one of these moments. Okay, the shift in consciousness has happened. People are in the streets, millions of them. How do you turn this into something, into a movement? And what we've seen in the last 17 months is in a way unheard of. I'm talking about the genocide, but I'm also talking about the solidarity.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure. Yeah, people realize then that to be in the streets every week, every 2 weeks, to have 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people in the streets for 16, 17 months is momentous.
No, completely. I mean, it's Hussein Zumlud said it on stage at the protest in London on Saturday. Not only is it the biggest, but it's also the most sustained and the longest protest movement in British history.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a profound historical achievement. You're talking about the country that of the suffragettes. You're talking about so many fundamental rights were built on the back of the British working class in this country and the protest movements that happened here. For all the complex things to do with British colonial history, right? Yet at the same time, you also have this profound history of radical struggle in this country. To be part of that, with the Stop the War movement and now the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and everything that's happening with it. I mean, I'm sure and you've seen, but also, I've had people from all around the world kind of looking at the protests that are happening in London saying, wow, and it's even happened to me because, during this time I've been abroad and in various different places where protest isn't so, the protest movement isn't so well structured and developed and organized, right? And so there are smaller protests or other, kind of things. And then you look at that, you're like, wow. And it's so important, and what that does is it tells you you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, some deep, profound level. Because
100%.
this is how, we kind of always need to sort of disentangle and understand the structures of censorship, right? Or of intimidation, or that prohibit forms of solidarity from being in flow, right? Or prohibit someone from engaging. And one of the ones is loneliness, right? If I step out, I'm going to be alone. And so it's profoundly important to be able to see that you're not. But of course, protest isn't the only form of struggle, right? And there are so many other different and important ways of engaging, but it's part of the. It's a profound and very important part of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask. Sorry.
I don't know how we're going to make this half an hour, Frank. It's
Oh,
impossible.
it doesn't need to be half an hour. Yeah, it doesn't need to be half an hour.
I'm like, because everyone always brings up the protest. They bring up Iraq, and then they feel, but that failed, right? Or even they bring up Egypt, and they kind of go, that failed, and immediately my heart goes. Of course, and it's just very simply, as we know, and we need to keep reminding ourselves, and as the Palestinians know most profoundly, no struggle for liberation is linear. Ever.
Yeah.
And it's really about the profound importance of your resilience at the moment at which you're lowest, because it will come.
Yeah.
Where I believe the future is written.
Yeah.
I think for so many of us as well, who have been engaged in struggle for a long time and who have kind of known, okay, what's going to happen when the momentum of this protest, of these last 16, when it comes to a close, right? And people are in burnout and people are like, I need a rest now, right? And there are those of us who are kind of thinking, well, that's the moment when the most profound work begins. And thank God more as well than we were. Of course, this hasn't stopped. And I think as well, for so many of us, it's been confusing, right? Like, with this fragile ceasefire, with an ongoing genocide, with a shift in focus to the West Bank. And, it's like, well, how do I recalibrate amidst all of this? But I mean, anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Egypt and what's been called the sort of Tahrir Square revolution. A lot of people, that's exactly what they would say. Look at the Arab Revolution, Arab Spring. It was momentous, unstoppable, but it failed. What, in a way, they forget about revolutions is that power is not going to go away that easily. And when there's a revolution, there's often a very, very violent, repressive counter-revolution. And that's what we've seen in Egypt, that's what we've seen in Tunisia.
And the counter-revolution is always a sign of the force of the revolution.
100%.
And the fact that the shift in consciousness is such that the embedded, the sort of cultural, the depth of the cultural shift has revealed itself in its desires, and therefore it has to be squashed. Right? But what that tells you is that the powers that be know how big a threat those people were. And so, if we measure it within, these last, whatever it is now, 12 years since the counter-revolution, really took its full force, then so far we've failed, right? But take that on a longer journey,
Yeah.
right? And will we have failed?
Yeah.
My profound answer is no, right? Because the need, the desire for that shift is still profoundly strong, and we keep seeing it across the region and in different forms. And now, for all the complications, look at Syria, or what
Yeah.
for me, it's an unstoppable force. The question is, how does it move?
Yeah.
And this sort of binary of failure and success for me, it's a misreading of historical processes to put things in that way. You know what? I mean, do we look at the Palestinian journey and say it's a failure? It's just it's a silly. We're talking about liberation struggles here, right? And
Yeah.
we could do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah. But it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it's the way capitalism works, right? It's success and failure, but the world doesn't work. Humanity doesn't work.
Well, and very often, it's this weird transposing of a political reading from countries in which there is a more functioning democracy, right? Where you can, where you have elections and someone wins and someone loses. And what do they succeed in doing over the 5 or 10 years that they're in power, right? And you're sort of transposing that mindset onto a situation in which the entire structure of governance is dysfunctional, and there are no possibilities of internal reform, such that the only solution eventually, and in a way that defies, someone making a decision like a button or an election or whatever it is, erupts.
Yeah.
Right? And after it erupts, which is always a beautiful moment, you then have this rot of a state and a structure of interests that is entirely from that old world, right? How do you start to sort that out? And it takes decades, it takes years. And a big part of it is, and so it always starts at some level with a deep and profound cultural shift.
Yeah, I want to talk about someone that you really care about, and that we all should care about, the Egyptian activist Alaa Abd El Fattah. He's been in prison on and off for the last, 10 years, but more recently, because he was arrested, then freed, then arrested, then freed, and then arrested again. He's also a British Egyptian citizen, so the UK has a big role to play in it. His mother, Layla, right? I thought, Layla has been on hunger strike for weeks now, if not months.
I don't know if she's. I mean, she reached 150 days on 0 calories, maybe a few more than 150, and she's now on a partial hunger strike after all of that, and a partial hunger strike called because one of her core demands, which eventually happened, was that Keir Starmer speak to Sisi directly, which has happened now. And we are, deeply waiting to see if that will result in Alet's release. And so she has given an opportunity for the sort of bureaucratic processes of state between Britain and Egypt to move, to have him released, we hope, in the coming weeks. Otherwise, it will. Otherwise, we will be in the worst. And Alet himself is also on a hunger strike, which he started on the first day of Ramadan.
Can you briefly? Yeah.
That was one of the things that I wanted to say earlier, but I wasn't sure if it was right or appropriate. But, because I went and visited her in hospital on, I think it was the 150th day of her hunger strike, when she was hospitalized in St. Thomas's. And frankly, it's just an extraordinary thing to witness. That force of resolve and love, and at some level political and moral clarity. On that, with her body in that place, and I swear to God, for me, somehow in the calmness of her breath, I witnessed the eye of the needle through which the future passes. That's what it felt like. And it's a place from which I attempt to draw some kind of resolve in relation to everything else.
Yeah.
It's just, but that, again, you could say so much about that family, you could say so much about Alaa. I think the point is, right now we are hoping that he's released in the next few weeks, and it has been an immensely long, profound struggle to reach that.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to say too much, because
I completely understand.
Let's just wait and see. But I think the important thing for people who don't know about the story to understand is that his last sentence was for 5 years, technically for sharing a Facebook post about a fellow prisoner who was tortured. That's the official reason why. And he should have been released on September the 29th last year.
Yeah.
According to that ridiculous sentence. However, he had been kept in pretrial detention for 2 years already, and so they should have included that within his sentence.
Yeah.
The time he'd spent in prison, which is what you do internationally and everywhere. And they decided not to. In other words, adding another 2 years onto his sentence, which would probably be then added with more and more. And so Layla took the decision that would be the day that she starts her hunger strike until he's released.
Yeah, and what Alaa example shows is that the repressive forces of power want to make examples of a few people, like historically, even during wars, even, during if you look at Palestine history, in 48, 47, 49, Israel, you had the Deir Yassin massacre, you had the Tantura massacre, which was a way for Israel to say, look, you better run away, otherwise Deir Yassin or Tantura is going to happen to you, and now, there's Abdel Fattah, Alaa Abd El Fattah, there's Mahmoud Khalil in the US, which is a way to scare people off, it's and it happens at so many levels, it happens, there's online repression, there's repression of demonstrations. I remember I was in London about 5 months ago, and I met with people of ELSC, European Legal Support Center. The main work is to work on Palestine criminalization. And one of the lawyer who was talking said that she had been she had been a lawyer for 10 years. And that she has always sort of defended the right of, the right to protest and stuff. And that what she was saying, people that had been arrested at demonstration, during direct actions and stuff, she said the first thing for about 9 years, I was telling them is like, John, first thing, don't worry about it. You won't go to jail. And she said that since October 7th, the first thing she says to people is, John, actually, there is a chance of you doing jail time for the exact same offense. So the repression has been incredible. And ELSC said, we went from like 100 cases a year to like 100 cases a month of repression and criminalization of teachers, of actors, but do you think, you've talked about it, and that's how I try to remain positive. And when people are saying like, look, we are facing this huge war machine, and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, what I keep telling them is that, if you don't do anything to challenge power, you'll be fine. But when you get attacked, and Chomsky said this many times, it's when you are criticized by power that you're doing something important. And in a way, the repression and the level of violence, as you were saying, I guess, is a way to show that power is quite desperate. But I wanted to just for you maybe to reflect on this and to talk about, what's happened in the UK. You have been formally invited. It's British, so it's very nice as well. You've been formally invited to an interview.
No, I've been invited to a formal interview.
Yeah, shit. You've been invited. Yeah, you've been invited to a formal interview with quite a few others, including Stephen Kaposh, who is 86 years old, Holocaust survivor, for participating in a protest in January. We won't go into much details about this, but
about the day. Yeah,
but it also I know I've been going all over, but it also shows that with the police targeting 86 years old Holocaust survivor, the police targeting Ben Jamal, the director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the police targeting KHALID Abdallah, a well-known actor, they're also showing like we are going to go for everyone. Like, in a way, no one is safe. So what does it say about that?
I want to answer that question in so many different ways, because I think as something I think that is really important that we start to do, broadly speaking, as a movement, is turn these negative scare tactics into something visibly positive. Part of how the scare tactics work is to, try and, as you say, discourage other people from standing up because they worry that it will cost them. When you can turn these things round into something that is valuable, right, that is inspiring, as it should be and as it was during the civil rights movement, at least certainly as we look back, this is, I think, where we need to go, and we need to have the sort of switch in our consciousness and strategically, think about this. There is another sense, going back to what we were talking about in Egypt, right? There is another sense in which these signs of increased repression, right, are also a sign of desperation on the other side, right? Yes, they are trying to make examples of us, but they are also trying to close down what avenues are left, and or avenues that have opened, right? Because so much has opened over these last 17, 18 months or so. And they're trying to kind of go, okay, how do we close it all? At least that's how it feels on this side. And that's also a sign of positive things that we have been doing. So I think it's, however, this is part of what you see, right? You see institutional power very often after a moment of rupture try to find the legal routes, the ways that, to use the law, rather, that's what you're describing as well, to use the law to restructure society in ways to defund, or, like they're defunding Colombia, whatever it might be, so that you you know, you target liberatory movements. The question for everyone, not just people who are aligned with Palestine, because this is what we're seeing, right? We're in a state of a complete erosion of the rights and norms that people have, you know, taken for granted for generations now and were fought for so hard, right? And now we're seeing those, you know, we're seeing brutal attempts for those to be taken away from us. And, you know, Palestine and being used as the, you know, people who are in support of Palestine being used as the example. There's something I said this in the meeting that we had after the January 18th protest involved in, right, is, you know, it's scary to see signs of a rising authoritarianism, right? But I think there's something since then that I kind of clarify in my mind a little bit, which is that it's almost like what we're seeing is because it can feel shrill to say a rise of authoritarianism. But what doesn't feel shrill at all to me is to say an authoritarianism for some.
Yeah.
Right? And insofar as the states and the powers that be can kind of go, right, let's try and just some deep authoritarianism for those people and everything that is aligned with them. And if we can structure things in that way, and what's weird to me about that, I'm speaking very openly here, maybe too openly, is that it's almost like it can allow some other people for a period of time to think, okay, well, I don't really care enough about those kinds of things, so I can get out of that authoritarianism for some.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now is that it's getting wider.
And closer.
Right?
Yeah.
And lots of people are starting to see, wait, this feels way closer than I was expecting. And, you know, we're the canary in the gold mine, you know, we're just like, it's just, you know, it's coming to us first. And we're sounding the alarm, you know? But for everyone, it's so plain to see. Yeah. And you know, people like you and us have been saying this for ages. You know, like you know, Palestine is the laboratory. But you know, it's just very simple.
Yeah.
At some level, it's like everyone needs to get engaged in whatever way they can. Right? It doesn't mean that you have to be on the front line. It doesn't mean, you know, but you stretch.
Yeah.
That little bit, whatever that is in your orbit, you stretch just that little further. Everyone has to do that, and collectively it turns into something bigger. And you know, from what I see, it's you know, that stretching, which can be very scary at first, and it can even sometimes be as simple as like a conversation with someone intimate, which can feel like your heart's bursting, you know, to do. But then you do it and you feel this rush of energy, and so then you learn to stretch more, and so on. And this is something which I do think is a good comparison to make with experience of revolution, right? Is, you know, anyone who's been on any big protests or that kind of protest will you know, that it's like people end up within the structure of a protest and a confrontation having different roles. There are people on the front line. There are people whose role it is to treat the wounded, right? There are people who shuttle between the front line and the middle. There are people. One of the things that I wasn't very good at being at the front. One of the things I was good at is, you know, when you're being attacked, people run, right? And when you run, you can't see what's behind you, and you're scared. You feel like the police, in our case, in Egypt, are on your back, and then there'll be people, and I was one of them who was good at turning around early enough to turn around and go, you know, you know, hold your ground, it's okay, we don't need to. These are all different roles. And at some level, we need to be thinking, I think, on all levels as a movement in that regard. Everyone has their part to play. And we also need to be like a broad church. It's not necessarily the right metaphor, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm gonna end it here because I mean we can do a part 2, but part 3, 4, 5, 6 can be the longest running podcast. But I think what you've just said for the last 3-4 minutes is what I'd like for people to take out of this conversation. That the fact that as long as we keep trying, there's hope, and as long as we keep trying, and as long as we keep educating people, having conversation with people, and I agree 100%. Sometimes it starts with your neighbor. It doesn't, a conversation with your neighbor. I mean, over the last 17 months, I've had people. I won't say his name. Yeah, sorry.
Or family.
Yeah, I mean, like. My landlord in London, I'm not sure if he's going to watch this show. He was about my age, an amazing guy, kind of private, English private school, rugby player, lovely guy, really lovely family as well. But never, I mean, he knew what I was doing. I think I stayed for 7 years in the flat he was renting, but never really asked any questions about Palestine. And we haven't really been in touch. We're in touch when France plays England in rugby. We always send each other like a quick text or something. And a couple of months after the genocide started, he WhatsApped me and he was like, Frank, I know you've been working on Palestine, but I'm not sure what you do exactly, but can you tell me more? Can you give me stuff to read? Can you? And honestly, and Tom, if you're watching, it's like this really what seems to be such a tiny, it's not even a victory, but I was like, shit, if Tom asks me about Palestine, there's fucking hope.
So before we end, I'm going to need to say this.
There's hope because like people have opened their eyes, and
this is something we need to understand about the way that again the censorship and the intimidation works. Is that part of what it does is not is there's a self-fulfilling cycle here that feeds itself, right? Where it's dangerous to talk about that thing, so we don't talk about it, and so we don't know how to talk about it, which self-reinforces this inability to move in any direction.
Yeah.
Again, like people often kind of ask me, because I'm an actor, right, if because I've stood up, this has cost me and work has stopped or any of those kinds of things. And what I have found, honestly, is the opposite. What I have found is that because I have stood up and done the things that I've done on red carpets or whatever it is, people have been able to find me and I have been able to find them. The circles of solidarity that sit in silence are suddenly activated because people who are, worried to speak openly at least know that it's safe to speak to me, right? And suddenly I look at a room and I read it in this completely different way. There are so many more people who are aligned, but don't know how to speak about it yet and don't know how to declare their solidarity or are afraid that they are late. And so it doesn't mean anything now for them to do so because it's just, and it's like anytime you come, you are welcome.
Yeah.
We can talk about why it was the case and we can feel sad about it and, whatever else we can feel.
Yeah.
But, there is no way forwards without this continuing to grow. And for it to be clear that the warm hand is always held out by those of us who are already engaged, right? The warm hand is always held out. Please join us.
See, that's the best way to end the interview. I wanted to end it 2 minutes ago, but now I've got the end. Hey, thanks.
I can talk to you forever.
Thanks, Khalid.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for this space. Thank you for all of it.
Same, Khalid. Anyway, thank you. Speak soon again, hopefully.
Cheers.
Bye.